Very good. Well, welcome to our session today. Joe Alexander and Ernest Swindell are our presenters, and today is all about unlocking the full potential of Copilot Studio. Joe and Ernest plan on providing you all with an end-to-end guidance on how to get started with your first Copilot agent. We aim to provide a digital event today that respects all individuals, so we ask that everyone assist in providing a welcoming and safe environment. We do bring 3 of these topics to our customers every month, so if you have a topic you wish us to consider in our schedule going forward, please go ahead and drop that in the chat, and we'll take note of that. To minimize any distractions or potential background noise today, we are going to leverage the chat for questions. So please go ahead and post questions there. And we have specialists waiting to answer them for you. If we have time at the end, we'll unmute the lines and take live questions as well. And then lastly, I do send a follow-up email to everyone who's registered for this session with the recording and the deck that's being leveraged today. That'll come from devictor@microsoft.com. If you don't wish to receive those in the future, just go ahead and reply back and I'll take you off that distribution list. So with that, thank you again for attending today, and I'm going to hand it over to Ernest and Joe. Thank you so much, guys, for bringing this topic to our customers today.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you so much. Thank you. So really quickly here, what we're going to do is we're going to get into Copilot Studio. And today we have an agenda. We want to first address, why? Why now? With the conversational AI, all of the movement that's going on in the marketplace, and why would you want to even consider leveraging the capabilities within Copilot Studio? So to do that, what we'll do is we'll go through we want to make sure that we formally introduce you to Copilot Studio to make sure that you're aware of what this particular capability is. We have tons of Copilots in the Microsoft ecosystem, so I want to make sure that you're aware of it. And we also want to make sure that you understand what is pertinent and what is important for you to have in place for you to build out your first agent, okay? And then once we go through that, giving an overview, Joe, my colleague here, will walk you through a demo of setting up a quick Copilot an agent, and also giving you insight to how you could even be able to publish that particular agent on a channel. And then from there, we would get food for thought. We would like to hear from the users on the call and get your feedback, okay? So as I mentioned, why now with Copilot Studio? And what we're finding and what we're seeing in the marketplace is that as of now, what we're seeing is 18% improvement of customer satisfaction. Also, employee productivity and expansion of market share is happening because of the capabilities and how this new phenomenon is being enabled into the space of technology now. We're seeing where there's over 37% of customers now leveraging digital assistants to interact with different organizations on their behalf. You also are seeing where you're getting inquiries are now being handled. At 75% of these inquiries are being handled by using conversational AI now. Reduction in time to resolve common issues at 45%. This is all occurring because of the ability to not only have this type of capability available, but also that you are able to spin it up in such a fast clip with tools and capabilities like Copilot Studio. And this last one, I think, is really telling around, there's an $80 billion reduction in labor costs as it relates to the automation and the modernization that's occurring with generative AI as it relates to conversational AI, okay? So that's part of the why. That being said, we understand that there are challenges to get this employed, to get this deployed in your environment. And so parts of that is that you have budget and time constraints. We understand that building solutions can be costly, especially if it's going to require custom development to pull this off. So organizations need to ensure that their conversational AI solutions are able to deliver enough value to offset the resource cost that's involved with with this from a pro dev standpoint, if that's the case. The other thing is organizations need to ensure that their backend infrastructure can handle multiple requests simultaneously without slowing down, especially if there is a large volume of users. So if you are dealing with scalability and scaling and making sure that your infrastructure can take that on, then that is something else that has to be taken into consideration when you're trying to do these things from the ground up. It's also important to have a process in place for updating the underlying content and ensuring that it remains accurate, right? Which can be tedious and time consuming to do manually. And what we're also seeing is the need to integrate. We understand that organizations have already invested time and effort in other solutions that you're getting value from. And so when you when it comes down to integrating, we want to make sure that it's not difficult to do so. However, up to this point, it has been somewhat of a challenge, especially if there are multiple third-party apps involved. And we often hear the question, tell me, how is this secure and how is this going to meet the compliance and regulatory standards that I am held accountable to? And so that's something else that we want to address. And because of all these things are varying, what has happened in the past is that it has required a very special skill set, technical skill set, to be able to pull all these things off. And so because of that, many organizations have struggled to get their ideas off the ground. So what I want to do next is kind of walk you through the evolution of conversational AI. Um, it was in the past, it was an exclusive domain, right? You had specialized vendors that were building solutions that were pretty much um, built from a vendor, but it wasn't always built to address the business need in a way that provided a lot of value to the users that needed it. So those bots a lot of times were built in-house. They were very expensive and time-consuming and required specialized product and technical onboarding to be able to get those things off the ground. So then you shift to, okay, let's build something in-house because we feel like that could be more custom to our actual business need. Well, when that occurred, what you had was um, there was a significant over-reliance of pro developers to deliver and maintain those solutions, combined with the skill shortage. And even now, you hear stories about the disconnect between IT and the business side of things, which led to difficulties maintaining relevant content due to long update cycles. So then we had a shift to low code. And so the composition of the teams building those bots shifted from developers only to makers of all kinds, including subject matter experts and pro developers. They were working together as fusion teams. I think that was a really good way to start getting to the center and getting to where we could make this more feasible for organizations to leverage this capability. Because it led to businesses working in joint environments out IT outcomes achieved through a collaboration from bot building. And that's where we started with the Power Virtual Agent, the predecessor of Copilot Studio. And because of that, that was a lot of good movement. However, there was still a gap. And so the shift to Gen AI, which powers co-pilots that you hear now called agents. And so since 2023, generative AI and large language models have completely turned the conversational AI industry on its head, both from a time to build perspective, now allowing developers to build with natural language, but also the breadth of knowledge and capabilities covered by the conversational assistant. This is exactly where Microsoft Copilot Studio comes to play.
Awesome. Thanks, Ernest, for that. And nice to see everybody today. Happy to be on the call with everybody and looking forward to a really good session around Copilot Studio. As part of this couple of slides here, I just want to do a little bit of an introduction of Copilot Studio itself. And by doing that, I'd like to actually leverage one of my childhood heroes, I guess you could say, to do so. For those of you who don't know, this is Raphael, part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he has an interesting statement in here that I'm going to play with you guys all, and we'll talk a little bit about how it relates to Copilot Studio.
Well, new game, Roundhead. Cricket. Cricket? Nobody understands cricket. You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. I'll teach you. 6 runs.
So that was my buddy Raphael,
Well,
who has a little confusion around crumpet versus cricket. And I kind of, this phrase kind of got stuck in my head. And I kind of looked at it and said, yeah, we're talking about Copilot Studio today. But the reality is that you got to know what a Copilot is to understand Copilot Studio. And so I think it's a cute little way to kind of introduce this section. So in that kind of light, let's first talk about what a Copilot is. And in short, it is an intelligent AI assistant. It's not an autopilot. It's not something that will just magically work. It is an intelligent AI assistant that uses generative AI and large language models, okay? And those can be custom copilots, one of which you're going to see today. We're going to go through the build process with around an HR use case. Those can be Microsoft copilots, first-party copilots like M365 or any of the copilots that appear in a number of our different applications that are out there. But really, it's designed to be an assistant that can help you through really any application or business use case. Now, where Copilot Studio fits in is Copilot Studio is the low-code, no-code front-end platform for building these copilots or extending current copilots that you have, like M365 Copilot, right? So when we talk about what is Copilot Studio, it's important to understand that sometimes we just kind of merge this term Copilot with Copilot Studio. And it's important to understand that in order to really understand what Copilot Studio is, you first have to understand Copilot itself, right? So we're going to be focusing on the platform today and building out those copilots. When you're building these things out, and these are some real typical building blocks that are really associated with any type of assistant, if you will. And there's really 4 core building blocks, and I want to focus on 2 right now, and we'll come back to the other 2 in a second. I want to focus on knowledge and channels. Because one of the great things around Copilot Studio now is we can create an agent or a copilot, if you will, based off of a specific set of knowledge, right? Maybe it's a handful of PDF documents, it's policies and procedure documents. Maybe it's a website you like to reference. Okay, there's a couple of different options to you. And we can make sure that we're defining and limiting our responses to folks with you leveraging generative AI to those specific pieces of knowledge, right? So you have control over that. The other one that we're going to showcase today and really dive into is the channels. Is one of the great things about Copilot Studio is that not only does it give you a place to go and build this Copilot from kind of a low-code, no-code standpoint, it also gives you options to actually deploy it, right? We'll see a couple of different deployment options today, but typically we see things that are, creating an HTML script to be able to add to a website. Another very common one is seeing it within Teams. How do we publish this within Teams? Both of which I'm going to show you guys today. But those are kind of the 2 real core components. We're going to talk also a little bit about logic and actions, right? Being able to build in logic into these copilots, right? These agents, so that we can make sure that if we've got various paths for folks to head down, they can. And then actions as well. Things like a very typical action is things like, adding an action that will go ahead and send an email off to somebody who's asked questions of the chat, kind of confirming what those responses were. So as we start to work through all these are really kind of the 4 core building blocks of these copilots that we're going to be looking at today. Okay. So why are we here though, really? Because with the introduction now of LLM-based chatbots and generative AI, it's really, as Ernest says, kind of advanced this whole process. The reality, though, is for many of you who are out there who are wanting to build and take advantage of like an LLM-based chatbot, you need a handful of things, right? You're going to need the things you're going to need an interface, some sort of interface. You're going to need the ability to have some sort of system integration, right? Where are we connecting to, right? You're going to have to also leverage AI safety. You're going to have some sort of level of bot skills, right? Some sort of orchestration or conversation orchestration. And then likely you're going to need some peripheral support. Things like where are we retaining all those transcripts, right? And then on top of it, you're going to actually then have to incorporate a large language model to help you with all those pieces. Well, the beauty about Copilot Studio is that when we spin up a Copilot in Copilot Studio, all of those things are included. right? So you're going to see with kind of an easy button how we have access to all of these things included within the Copilot Studio platform itself, which is really great. And from an efficiency standpoint, makes it very easy for folks who have no business building chatbots like me. That can go into there and now start building these and start becoming and providing value to the organization. Before we go any further, though, I want to talk a little bit about the term agent. And you've maybe heard me say agent throughout this couple of slides already. Really, there's this concept of the rise of the agent in Copilot Studio. You're going to start hearing agentic capabilities and agents more often. It's starting to replace terms like bots and chatbots, right? Chatbot isn't always going to be called chatbot. It's going to go through an evolution, right? But now we're starting to leverage this concept of agents within Copilot Studio. And it's important to understand why is that it really is a shift to incorporate new advanced Copilot Studios or capabilities within Copilot Studio. There's many things they call a visible agent. These are probably, I'd venture to guess that 90% of the folks on the call today, this is typically what you're thinking of when you're thinking of an agent or a chatbot. Maybe it's appearing on a website as it is here. Maybe it's in your Teams channel, as we're going to see today. But this is probably what you're thinking of, is how do I create a visible agent and incorporate LLM? Great, no problem. But the reason we're trying to start to use this word agent is that you're going to start to see soon coming to a GC tenant near you is this concept of a secret agent. Okay? And so imagine instead of having a pop-up on your website where someone can ask a question of your agency or your department, or maybe even having that within Teams, imagine having just an email, where as an internal employee, maybe I can send an email to info@county.com with a question around an HR policy. And that agent is basically monitoring that inbox. And when it sees something that is HR related, it grabs that content, it provides a response, and it sends a reply automatically. So that's a secret agent. And so as those things start to become available in GCC tenants very, very soon, we're going to start to see some of these things that may have been manual kind of visible agents on the left may start to turn into more of a secret agent on the right-hand side there, which is really super exciting and is really some fun stuff to start playing with. So I'm going to try to use the term agent as much as I can in here. I may slip up once or twice as we move through the demonstration, but I want to make sure everybody understands kind of what agent actually represents. So Ernest, I'll turn this back over to you to kind of talk about a few things before I get into setting up that first agent that we want to make sure we take into account.
Thanks, Joe. And so before you set up that first agent, there are some things that we want you to be mindful of that you want to have already set up in your environment and be knowledgeable of. So the first thing is be informed, be educated about what is an agent, what does this Copilot Studio toolset capability provide? Well, it's a Copilot, it's an agent, it's an assistant, not an autopilot. So these agents are not set to come in and fully do all of the tasks that you are currently doing. They are here to assist and offload some of the workload that you have. And so we want to make sure that you are informed about the different capabilities within Copilot Studio, how to leverage it, how it enables you to walk through that front door to get this generative AI journey started, and how it can also extend into other things around some of the other capabilities we have as it extends into our full stack of Azure AI things as well. Go ahead, Joe. The next thing we want you to be mindful of is the license. Be licensed properly. So to create and manage agents with Copilot Studio, there are two licenses that you need to be aware of. The first one is what we call the user license, or the per user license. So this Copilot Studio user license, what it does is it allows for your makers, the people that are responsible for creating and managing these agents, these bots, that they are able to get into the Copilot Studio interface and do just that, create the agents, which Joe will show you here shortly. You see here that those particular licenses are a $0 expense, $0 SKU. And so this again allows for you to dedicate those licenses, assign those licenses to the people within your organization that you have given, that you want to build these agents with for your different users. The second one is your capacity license. So this is at the tenant level. You can see that the tenant administrator would be acquiring this. And so this is where you get those messages and the capacity to be able to publish this bot and be able to enable other users to access it. So that's the other license that you will need. So you do not have to license each user for that will be leveraging this particular agent or bot, right? It's licensed at the tenant, and then you want to provide that $0 license to the people that are responsible for creating and managing those agents. Okay. The next thing we want you to be able to do is also we want you to be prepared, be ready. So what does that mean? Well, prior to you even being able to get into Copilot Studio, you need to ensure, or for those bots to work with generative AI, let's say it that way, you need to verify that your tenant is set up properly. So there is a setting to ensure that bots can be published with AI features. That needs to be enabled at the tenant level. Then at your environment level, we want to make sure that the Bing search capability is enabled as well. And so those two things need to be turned on, along with giving the proper roles to the individuals that are responsible for creating those bots. So the two that now there are other roles that you can assign, but the two that are like table stakes, you want to make sure that they're in place as your system admin and your environment maker, because those two will allow you to be able to get in there and manipulate those agents and set them up and even share them with other people that can also help with informing those agents to do different things. Okay. The last thing, but not the least, is to begin with the end in mind. So what we are talking, when we are talking to our different users and customers, we want to make sure that they are thinking about where would this particular agent, where would it live, and who will access this agent? Who will access it? So based on who will access it, that tells me where I should publish this particular agent. So if the person that's going to access this is in a specific team or on a specific internet site or somewhere specific, I want to make sure that I'm publishing that bot to that channel so they can access it. If it's to a public site, because I have public information that's accessible, then I would publish it to that public site. So when you are starting to build out that agent and you're thinking about the knowledge sources and all of the information that you want to leverage, that you want to ground this agent on, then you're grounded it based on the channel in which a user will interact or engage with this agent. Okay, so begin with the end in mind. So think about the channel. You want to make sure you're thinking about the things that need to be set up ahead of time, the different controls that need to be turned on, and also the information, understanding how will this bot, how will this agent be leveraged for my organization. So the education process on that is something that we are all here to assist and help you with. So don't think that you have to do these things on your own. But we do want to highlight them so you know that these should be top of mind when you're thinking about creating an agent within your organization.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Ernest. So now comes the fun part, guys. So we've kind of gone through the why and the how and some things. We actually want to spend the rest of our time here actually building for you guys and showing you how to do this. So I am going to go ahead and exit out of this screen here. And I'm going to open things up. Now I got a few things I want to show you guys here. I'm gonna show you some high level things, some of those requirements that Ernest was just talking about here. I'm going to work my way all the way over to actually starting to build a bot here. Okay. So as Ernest said, one of the first things we want to ensure is that we're licensed correctly, right? So this is the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And I'm just going to go ahead and search up my guy. And then obviously you need admin or M365 admin rights to do this. But if I open up my user record here, and I click on licenses, one of the things you're going to see down here at the bottom is my Copilot Studio user license. Okay, so I have that set as part of my whole licensing gig. Okay, so that has to be something that first and foremost the user has access to and is licensed for in order to build these bots. Okay. The second would be that tenant's capabilities that Ernest talked about on one of those previous slides, right? The ability to ensure that Copilot is set up across the tenant. So if I come in here to my tenant setting, my Power Platform Admin Center, and I go to settings in my tenant settings, and I search for Copilot, I'm again going to be able to see that I have published Copilots with AI features, and I have that enabled in this tenant. Okay, that's kind of, benchmark 2 to get through as you're starting to work through this in GCC. The last thing I need to do is an environment level. You'll see I'm still at the Power Platform Admin Center. This is where I can come in and I can create a new environment if I need to, right? We want to be able to set that up, okay? I've already done that today. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to February. Here's my February Copilot Studio webinar. And there's two things I want to kind of point out here specifically as it relates to our session here today. One, I come down here, you'll notice that I have my generative AI features, or I have allowed my Bing search, right? So in addition to the tenant settings, again, at the environment level, we have to ensure that we are enabling the generative AI features. The other thing that I want to make sure I account for is at a user level within this environment. So if I come in and find my user and ID, again, here I am, Joe Alexander with this environment. If I come in, I want to ensure that I have the appropriate environment maker role for this particular environment that I set up in order to build, right? Now, if I'm a system admin, it doesn't matter. System admin kind of covers everything, but reality is not everyone's a system admin, right? But when you're starting to set up your governance around these environments, and here's who I want to be able to be in this environment and creating custom copilots. A combination of the license that they have along with the environment maker piece is what they need in order to build. Okay, so those things on the slide, that's kind of what it looks like in real time. The last thing I'll show you here just from a setup perspective, and I think it's important to understand, is that Ernest mentioned the capacity licenses, right? You build licenses are fine, those are the zero cost, but you need capacity license in order to use these as well. I'm back in the Power Platform Admin Center under my resources for capacity. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, I have my add-ons, right? And here's where I'm able to, as a Power Platform admin, manage where my Copilot Studio capacity allotments get assigned, right? And I've got sessions and messages down here. It's going through a little bit of a shift, but the principle's the same here. So I can come as an admin and say, hey, I would like to manage for my February. It would help, I guess, if I spelled February right. For this particular environment where I know we're going to be utilizing it, I want to go out and I want to assign 100,000 Copilot Studio sessions or 100,000 messages, what that is. The reason this is beneficial is if maybe you're a central IT group and you've got multiple environments for multiple departments, all the Copilot Studio capacity is at the tenant level. And utilizing this component allows us to say, all right, agency A, you purchased X amount, here you go. Agency B, here you purchased X amount, here you go. And you can allot this out appropriately to the various environments where you are building these copilots or these agents. See, I skipped it on myself. Okay. So just from an admin standpoint, from the M365 Center all the way down into the Power Platform Admin Center, those are some of the areas you can go to ensure that you've got things set up correctly and you're ready to go build and use the agents. Okay. So what does that look like? So now welcome to Copilot Studio. This is our Copilot Studio interface. A couple of things of note. Copilot Studio leverages, again, the same types of environment concepts that your Power Apps do, that your Power Automate do. So when you're building these copilots, you want to ensure first and foremost that you're in the correct environment. You'll notice that I am in the correct environment up here. It's my February Copilot Studio environment I built actually for just today. So first thing is just to make sure you're in the right environment there. Okay. When I get into here, you're going to see a couple of things. You'll see they actually have a couple of agents already built out. I've got this Ask HR agent that we're probably going to use here in a little bit. I've got one for ETS. I got a state of California website agent I put together, and then another DLE. So I've got a few different agents that may service different needs. They may all have different data sources. They all have different knowledge bases, etc. But they all serve a purpose. Okay. You'll also notice, and we're not going to get into it today, but I mentioned earlier in the session that Copilot Studio can be used to create agents or modify ones that you currently have. And this is an example of that. So you can see that as part of this environment, I have M365 Copilot. And if I need to, as an admin, come in and make some adjustments or configurations or add some additional, maybe external data sources to my M365 Copilot, I can leverage the Copilot Studio interface to be able to do that here today. Okay. So whether you're building something custom or wanting to configure one of the pre-built Copilots already, this is the place where you can come and go. Okay. So I mentioned too in that slide where I had Copilot all covered in kind of that big box which says, hey, you get all this stuff. You really do. So let's go ahead and just start the process of what we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead here and just click on a new agent. And so the new agent is basically going to give me the ability to, name my agent. So I'm just going to call it Ask HR for right now. Okay. I can put a description into here. Please assist employees with HR related questions. Okay. And I can also give it some instructions. I can say, hey, please respond. And if I could type right, that would be great. If you've ever seen me do a demo, I'm notoriously bad at typing. Please respond in a polite and professional manner. Right. So you can give it some instructions here around the behavior, etc. So it's a really great way to kind of give it some personality, okay, and give it some details as far as how you want it to act. Okay. You'll notice the last thing I can do down here is add knowledge. We're going to do that in a second, but I'm going to skip right to the create where we can kind of see all this in one place. So these are kind of some of the key things you want to have in your agent as you're setting it up. Okay. So now it takes me to my UI where I can really start to build my agent. Okay. Couple things we need to do up front, okay? And it's critical that you remember these things, because if you don't, you'll likely be calling Ernest or Deb or myself or maybe your local TS on, hey, my Gen AI isn't working. I've done all the things you've said. It's still not working, right? A couple of critical things. First and foremost, let's go up into settings. We've enabled generative AI in a couple of spots already, right? But we also need to do it within your individual agent. Reason being is there may be agents that don't use generative AI capabilities. Okay, that is still available, right? But the likelihood of that, we'll never know. But I can come into here and I can hit generative and I can save. Okay, so that's kind of step number one that I need to do here. Make sure that I'm leveraging my generative capabilities. Step two of what I always like to do when I come in here is verify what my security is going to be on this. Okay, is this going to be a public-facing bot that I want to put up on my website that I want to be available to everybody in any channel, right? Is it something that I want to put into my Teams channel or on maybe on my intranet, and I want to make sure that whoever's accessing it within my organization is authenticating with their Entra ID authentication? Or, is there some way to have a third-party authentication where I want some generic OAuth to be able to authenticate that way as well? Okay, so this gives you some options as it relates to what types of authentication. For the sake of today, for showing you guys a few things, I'm just going to put it on no authentication because it opens up a few things that otherwise wouldn't be available. So we're going to go just set that as no authentication. So those are the first two things I do from a settings perspective anytime I start with a new agent. Okay. The third thing I do is this tricky little button right here under the knowledge piece. There is a feature in here that says allow AI to use its own general knowledge. And what this means is we're going to shortly add a few items into the knowledge base for it to be able to source and use. Okay. What this means is that if it does not find an answer from that in that knowledge source, that it's essentially going to go out and call it a Bing search, call it a Chat GPT, call it whatever you want. It's going to go out into the internet and it's going to try to find the best answer for you. Okay. I always like to start by turning that off. And the reason being is if I'm building this for a specific business purpose, I want to have control over the responses, especially in something like HR. I only want it to respond based off of the data that's in my policy documents. I don't want it to go out and try to pull a policy document from somewhere else and give an answer it thinks is right. Okay. So I think it's always good to start there from a disabled standpoint. Now, there may be use cases where you want that enabled. Totally fine. But this is a good place to kind of foundationally start. Okay. The next thing we want to do here is we want to start adding our knowledge sources. And so we come to our tab here and say, hey, we've got a button to add a knowledge source. I'm coming here and you'll see that I got a couple of different things that are available to me right now. Most typically where we see people using this right now is in a couple of different areas. One, where they can connect this to a SharePoint site where maybe you're storing a SharePoint folder where you're storing a handful of different documents, okay? And you would like to be able to use this agent to go ground in those particular documents that maybe get updated on a regular basis. That's an option for you. Number two is a public website here. And I'm going to skip to the left here. This is becoming very popular for agencies and states who would like to have kind of that little helper bot on their website, which maybe they don't currently. So if somebody comes to a state website, rather than have to kind of figure out where the heck they're going and where to find information, they can just have a little bot that pops up and says, hey, I got a question around X, Y, and Z, and it takes them right there, right? So that's a public website. We're grounded in the data that's on that website. And the third one, which we're going to do right now, is files and uploading documents from my local computer. PDF files, Word docs, wherever they may be, that you want to ground this information in. The two other items, and I'm not going to talk too much about them right now, but they're in preview. For those of you who are leveraging Dataverse today, this is exciting because we're going to start be able to point this at Dataverse itself and be able to ask questions of maybe one of our tables in Dataverse. So if you're using maybe cases or incidents, or you've got some custom tables you've created within Dataverse, we can actually layer this on top of that data and use it to ask questions of the actual information itself. In addition, we have a handful of other enterprise data connectors in preview as well. So the idea being that, hey, if you would like to come in and you have got, I don't know, let's just go ahead and say you've got some Oracle database sitting somewhere on-prem that you just can't get rid of, and you want to be able to do a search on it, right? Maybe you want to connect to that and leverage over that data. We've got connectors in there where you can go ahead and execute maybe a query based off of information in that Oracle database. So you'll have some flexibility as it relates to some of these knowledge sources moving forward, right? But for right now, we're going to keep to kind of the core ones within the knowledge base of SharePoint, public websites, or files. Okay. So let's do it. So I've got a couple of files I want to upload. I can drag and drop, or I can just click to browse. I'm going to go ahead and browse, and I know I had some files from back in September that I wanted to leverage. There's just some HR documents that are in here: employee handbook, state holiday FAQ, compensation document, etc. And I can go ahead and open those and upload them. Now, there are some limits to these uploads. I mean, but it's the PDF. I think the file is like 512 megs, which obviously is pretty large. You can put as many of these as you wish into here. The limit for these is fairly high, not as many. I'll retract that a little bit, but it can be significant. So you've got some flexibility as far as, hey, I've got a handful of documents. I did one just a few weeks ago where I had an 872 rules and regulation page document that I put into here and leveraged this against. Okay, and so depending on how big that information is, it may take a few minutes for this actually to index all of these documents. And so I'm going to let that run for right now and kind of come back to it in a few minutes. But it's just as simple as that, is adding that files. I can add additional knowledge sources. Maybe I want to add those files and a public website. I could do that as well. Okay. So I've kind of taken the first two things, creating the basic Copilot Studio bot and defining what those knowledge article or what those knowledge-based components are going to be. Okay. The third one I want to talk about, and again, I'm not going to spend too much time in topics and actions today because I kind of look at those as level 200 concepts versus those of you who may have never built one of these before and may want to do something fairly simple to what I'm explaining now, is pointing to your website or got a handful of documents. But topics and actions are powerful things that you can leverage. Topics gives you the ability to not only have to use this conversational boosting component, right? There are elements, or maybe there are certain questions that if asked, you would like the bot to give a predefined answer to. You don't want it doing a Gen AI search. You don't want it guessing. You don't want it going out and trying to figure out what the right answer is. You can also create a topic yourself that will specifically define that. In the HR world, one of those things I think might be helpful, and again, I'll go ahead and just create a description from Copilot here. This is going to be a complaint escalation. So you may ask a lot of questions around your HR bot. How many days off do I have? When are our holidays? How do I enroll in 401k? There may be things like that, right? But in this case, I want to create a topic to automatically have the employee contact Joe at 555-555 for any complaint issue, right? So now what this does is it adds into this a topic that will be specific to that particular item. So if I'm asking questions in here around a specific type of issue around complaints, rather than doing leveraging the generative AI, it's just going to say, for any complaint issues, please contact Joe Alexander. Okay, so this gives you the ability to control what some of those topics may be if you are not comfortable with maybe a certain answer being asked by answered by the generative AI capabilities. And the other things too with actions are neat too as well, because you can add elements to these as well. Again, kind of more of a level 200 conversation. But one of the actions you can do in here, let's say you want to create an action that says, based off of the information I'm collecting in this particular chat, maybe I want to add a new record to Dataverse. Maybe it's something that goes on a customer support site and you're asking what their issues are. And at some point it says, hey, would you like to submit a case? You can go ahead and create this and add those new rows directly to Dataverse. Maybe you want to do something as simple as send an email, right? Where you would like to add an element where I can go ahead and send an email based off of the conversation that we had, that the chatbot had or the agent had with the person, giving them a history of what they actually discussed and spoke about. So those are actions that you can roll into this process as part of any agent experience. Okay. And then the last one is channels. And this is where it gets kind of neat, because I built this bot, right? I can test it over here on the left-hand side. Let's go ahead and just look at my knowledge real quick just to see. Okay, cool. They've all indexed, so we're ready to go. Let's go ahead over here on the right-hand side and just ask it a test question. So test my agent. What are our state holidays for 2025? So as the builder, I can come in here and start testing these things out and say, yeah, these are the types of the questions are creating appropriate responses. You can see this kind of work in here, and it will come back with a response. It's going to tell you where it resourced that, and here you go. This is the response I get, right? Maybe ask it something like, how many vacation days? See, I'm notoriously bad at typing, but it's going slow for me here. Days do I get after 5 years of employment? All right, so you can start to ask it questions in here to determine, hey, is it acting appropriately before I go down the path of publishing this out to a channel that after 5 years of continuous full-time experience, you will earn 10 hours of annual vacation leave for each month, right? So it gives us the ability to kind of see this information. Now, once I've kind of tested that out and ready to go, I can come to my channels area here. Now, the reality is there's a couple of different areas here from a channels perspective. I would say 95% of you who we talk to on a regular basis want to do one of two things. One, you want to put it onto a custom website. Maybe it's an intranet, maybe it's your own website, your state or your local website. Or two, you want to deploy it in Teams. Okay? And both of those options are available to you. Some of these other ones that are on here, you could go ahead and potentially leverage. But typically, these are the two that are the most popular. So when we do the custom website, right, it basically gives us this little HTML snippet that I can go ahead and embed then onto my site. And what it does is it takes my bot and it pushes it onto that site. Let me show you an example of one that I did for that. And I'll just go ahead and open this file up here. And what I did is I just scraped some HTML off of a website. I actually just used my own local state of California website. And I went ahead and put into Visual Studio and added my little HTML to it. And I am not an HTML guy by any stretch of the imagination. And it changed some of the settings on the original website here, right? But what it did do is it went ahead and added it right onto the site here. So this is this is somewhat of the state of California website. Looks a little different because, like I said, my HTML skills are not up to par. But I can go ahead and embed that right into the website, and I have that website agent popping right up onto my page. So that's kind of what it could look like from a HTML standpoint. The other option here that's most popular is actually Teams. Okay? So I can come in here and I can go ahead and turn on the Teams integration. Now, a couple of things you'll notice for those of you who have been here, have worked with it, it's looking now at my Ask HR bot, right? It now says, hey, the channel was added. I can edit some details around this particular channel. Oh, it's reminding me I need to publish this agent before I can make it available. We all miss out on things every once in a while. So let me go ahead and publish that. There we go. All right, it's being published. Let's come back to our channels piece. Why did verification fail? That's all right. We are prepared for this. So that's why we have backup agents. Here's another Ask HR agent I had. Basically the exact same thing. that we just built out just with a different name. But instead here, again, I can come into my channels. I can go into Microsoft Teams. I can look at my availability options for the agent that I just built, and you'll see a few things in here. There's two easy buttons here: show teammates to shared users and show everyone to my org. In GCC now, I just want to put out there, these two buttons are not working necessarily as they are supposed to. Okay, so typically our best practice at this point is to go ahead, instead of trying to add these from the screen, it's just easy to download a zip file and then go ahead and import that zip file into your Teams section. Now, as an admin, you can come into Teams there, and I can come into my apps very easily. I can manage my apps, and I can upload an app. Now, you may want to upload it as an app that is an enterprise-wide app to your org. So your Teams administrator would go in, approve that, which my Teams administrator did for one for me here last night, and make it available as part of the apps to folks within your organization. From there, you can control who has access to it through Teams admins, okay? Or you can upload it as a custom app. So if you want to test this out, you built this out, and you want to send it out to a handful of people and say, hey guys, I want you to test this out. Will you load this app and tell me kind of what it looks like and how it does? That can happen here as well. So you can go down either one of those particular pages. Right. Once I've uploaded this app, it basically becomes this chatbot on my left-hand side here. So you'll now see I've got an Ask HR agent. So in all the world of my Teams admins here, or my Teams chats, I can come into my Ask HR agent, and I can ask it the exact same kinds of questions, right? What are holidays for 2025? Okay. So in theory, I'm never having to use or leave Teams in this particular scenario. I'm giving people the ability to access and respond to these things directly from here as part of this agent. Okay. And there you go. There's the response it got back, as well as a link to the actual PDF documents and where they found it. Okay. Really powerful. The other thing I'll point out here as well is that zip file is just a door to the agent, right? So if you make a change to the agent, you don't have to then redeploy the zip file, okay? It's simply sending that message back to the agent within Copilot Studio, generating the response, and displaying it here. So for those of you who are worried about the administration nightmare of, well, things are always changing, you don't have to. This is just simply giving you a door into the actual Copilot agent that you've created. So really pretty powerful thing. So it allows you to not only deploy it in something like a Teams channel here. I'll show you another example of one other thing that I had done yesterday as well. In addition to doing that custom, now if I want to go ahead and give this to my Teams administrator and say, hey, would you make this part of the apps available within Teams? This was the one that I did last night. I submitted this to my Teams administrator. He went in and approved it. And now if I'm within the organization, I can come in here and actually open that up and leverage that particular agent across my entire enterprise there as well. So pretty neat thing. So being able to create it within channels, being able to within Copilot Studio, and then determine based off of how you would like to deploy it. Is it going to be a zip file that's going to go into Teams? Is it going to be an HTML script you're going to put onto your custom website? Or is it one of the other options you may want to pursue? So I know that was kind of a lot, but within the span of about 20 minutes, we were able to spin up a bot, an agent. See, I'm doing it myself. We're able to define a knowledge source. We're able to trigger all the generative AI capabilities, add a specific topic, and then ultimately be able to deploy it to a specific channel that we have in mind as well. So with that, I'm actually going to come back in. There we go. And leave it from there. At this point, we'd love to open it up to questions, I guess. I know there were some questions that were happening in the chat there that hopefully I think people were getting some answers on.